Peter Armstrong from Populous, and I'm really excited for today's webinar. Just like to welcome you all. We have in the Populous office, so this is actually quite a different one. We have almost a studio feel. We've got a couple of laptops, we've got the stand-up desk, and we're just about to launch with I'll get these slides happening. I'm just about to launch our webinar for the day with Amy. And before we do get into that, our professional development series is about giving some insights into our clients and people into our network, and anyone who wants to have a listen. Populous is all about helping develop the team, and obviously from an HR there's the compliance side, but with the important aspect of developing your people. So today with Amy, and we're going to explore emotional intelligence and how you can improve your team by getting the most out of not just your team but also yourself. So without too much more rabbiting on, we've got the teas and the mini muffins, and we're good to go. So, Amy, welcome to the Populous studio.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's so nice to be here, and thank you to everyone who's online today as well that's going to take the time to go through some EI with us today. So to get the session started, I always like to give a bit of an example of what emotional intelligence is, and something that's nice and easy that's out there in the media, and something that most of us can relate to is people that we hear a lot about, right? So if I throw out there for you Nick Kyrgios, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, I like to use Nick as a great example heading into an emotional intelligence session. Now you're probably guessing it's not because he has great emotional intelligence, it's probably quite the reverse. But he's a great example of showing that people can be so technically great at what they do and real experts in their field. He's a great tennis player, and he's got some really fantastic skills in there. However, he lacks emotional intelligence in such a big way that it brings him into the limelight and into the media for probably the wrong reasons a lot of the time. Now, if we relate this into the workplace and into yourself and the people that you interact with as well on a daily basis, I'm sure there's people that you can think of as well that are really great at their job. They're technical experts, they've got all of the qualifications, they've got the years of experience behind them. And if you've got a technical question or something that you'd like to know, they're the first people that you actually turn to. A lot of the time, these people, while they're technically great at what they do, they actually lack in the emotional intelligence space. And when you're lacking in that emotional intelligence space, it can really hold you back in the successes of your career and also the success of the company that you're in. So what we're going to talk about today is what is emotional intelligence, and going through those 5 factors, how can we really zone in on those 5 factors, and what are the things that we can work on in those areas in order to improve emotional intelligence in our teams and also in ourselves. Now, there is an option for questions and chatting along the way, so please let me know that you can hear me and that you're on board. It's always nice to have a bit of interaction in a webinar, so pop in a hi for me, let me know that you're there, and let's get into the presentation.
And if I can just add to that, thanks very much for that, Amy. I just wanted to reinforce that we will have a Q&A at the end. And I mean, we do have quite a few people on board for today's webinar. I know we have people from Victoria, from Sydney, from down in Albany, and up in the north of WA as well. So obviously we're coming from Osborne Park in Perth, with plenty of us in Perth. So so welcome the questions. Type your questions in as we're going along, and we will get to them towards the end. So thanks, Amy. I'll let you continue.
Great, let's move on. And a big hello there to Kylie and Lynn as well. Pop it in there if you're with us as well. Okay, so the webinar objectives, we're going to work through 4 areas today. We are going to go at a high level as well, just to be able to see, okay, what does it mean, and am I interested in delving into this area in more detail? So the 4 areas are the 5 key factors of EI and what they actually mean. We're going to touch on leveraging the subconscious mind to resolve underlying problems. We're going to talk about the qualities developed from those 5 key factors of EI, and also the emotional brain and how it actually drives our reactions. Let's start off by looking at those 5 key factors of EI. Now, this slide here will show you a nice circle that kind of shows you the complete why of EI. It's what I like to refer to as kind of that overarching circle of what actually encompasses emotional intelligence. So if we start at the top at the darkest quadrant, not a quadrant, Amy, because there's more than 4, segment, let's go with. So the first one there is self-awareness. So I would always recommend that self-awareness is a great place to start with emotional intelligence. I think it's pretty much known that before we can improve our relationships with others and the way that we communicate and the impacts that we have on others, we really need to be self-aware. We need to know who we are, what makes us tick. We need to know the underlying values that are in there, like that self-belief, the value, our happiness. What is it that makes us happy? And probably the area I work on the most in this with many of my clients is the actual self-doubt. So self-doubt is an absolute killer for so many of us in self-success as well. And it all comes down to that awareness of who we are and what's actually driving our beliefs as well. And we're going to touch on that in further slides. Self-regulation is the second area, and the self-regulation is all about actually controlling your emotions. So once you know yourself and you know what makes you tick, then we move into, okay, how do I regulate? How do I actually control my reactions in this situation? Now, I was talking to Peter earlier, self-regulation is probably the most common reason people come to me for emotional intelligence. And I hear a lot of the time that, Amy, I know who I am and I know how I react and I don't like it, but I just can't control it. How do I control the way that I react in situations? And how do I regulate my emotions? So this is all about ownership. It's about empowerment, and it's also about that confidence as well, and being able to stop and actually reframe those emotions. Motivation is something that it's one of my favorites, actually, because I think motivation is all about, we've all had dreams. We all have dreams, and dreams are so healthy to have. But there comes a time in life where we need to turn those dreams into reality. And the only way to change those dreams into reality is to actually turn them into a goal. So we talk about in motivation, how do we actually get things done? Like, let's stop talking about it. Let's create those steps to actually achieving what we really want to do in life. And that's all about passion, direction, and success. Moving into people skills. People skills are great for those that are in leadership positions, but leadership is not a job title. So people skills are for everyone. A lot of the time I hear, okay, I don't need to do anything in the leadership space because we're dealing with all of our frontline staff. And at that point, I would say that's absolutely not the approach to take. Leadership skills are something that are within everyone, and you definitely shouldn't be relying on a job title to actually pull out those leadership skills. So in that area, we work on relationships, where if you have anything to do with any people on a daily basis, which of course we all do, then relationships are key to the outcome of those days and those conversations. We also talk about empathy. I'm going to touch on that later on in the session as well. Empathy is one of my favorite, is very misunderstood. And we'll talk about how it's misunderstood and the best way to approach it as well. Communication is probably the broadest of EI. It's one of those areas that everybody can always do with a little bit more of. Communication has changed drastically over the last, I'd say, especially 10 years. Communication these days is not so much about the verbal and what we say and the words that come out of our mouth. It's actually more about what we're typing. So communication training these days is very different to any communication that's been there in the past. So if you've been on a communication course, which I'm sure many of you have, you're going to find that's going to be really different to the communication styles and what we're doing these days in that space. It's really showing you how to influence and the impacts of your communication through written form, through things like email, social media, and also into meetings and things like that. So it's bringing out the ability to influence, it's bringing out opportunity, and also creating supporters with everybody they're communicating with. So that's a very high level of EI. Let's move into some details. So let's play with the mind first. I want you to just get a little bit comfortable for me while you're listening through these details. This takes a little bit of the scientific side of emotional intelligence. And for those people out there that are very factual people that like to analyze, this is always great information for you just to know, okay, how does it fit in and what's actually happening in my mind in this area? So there are three key areas, three key parts to our mind. Those three areas being the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. Now, if I start with the unconscious mind takes up 30 to 40% of our ability. And what the unconscious mind is doing, it's actually keeping us alive. So that unconscious mind makes sure that we're breathing, it's making sure that all of our bodily functions are happening. But not only that, our unconscious mind is telling us that, if I'm going to lift my arm up in the air, I don't need to say to my mind, lift my arm up in the air. It just does it all unconsciously. It just does what it needs to do for us to be able to actually function. I have had somebody say to me before, does my unconscious mind, Amy, help me when I've had too much to drink and I'm feeling unconscious? And I said, yes, it probably does that as well. It's keeping you alive. But let's hope that that's not 30 to 40% of your life. Let's head in now to the conscious mind. So we're going to jump the subconscious ahead to the conscious first. The conscious mind is all about your frontline mind, really. So if you're sitting in front of a computer at the moment, I want you to have a look at the computer and have a look at the keyboard, the mouse, the screen, all of this. If you picture our mind like a computer, this is your conscious mind. This is the part that communicates with the world, and it's the stuff that you can physically it's the stuff that is the first touch of your mind. Everything needs to go through your conscious mind before it can make it to your subconscious mind. It's also the place where we do quick responses. So if you've ever said something and then thought, wow, I probably shouldn't have said that, or that came out way too quick, you can thank your conscious mind for that. So that's the part of your mind that is throwing these quick responses out there. There's limited space in your conscious mind. There's only so much you can store in there before you either push it into your subconscious mind, into your memory, or it gets pushed out the door. Conscious mind also gives you the ability to focus. So if you can picture yourself, if you have ever driven in your car somewhere and got to your destination and thought, how did I get here? Did I remember that red light camera? Did I, remember that speed camera along the way? I don't actually know how I got from A to B. I hope I've done everything right. That's your actual conscious mind, its ability to focus on what it needs to do. It's also the analysis of incoming data. So everything you learn today will go through your conscious mind first, and it will actually analyze it before it goes to your subconscious mind. It's also your short-term memory. So you can see 10% of your mind, there's a lot going on in that 10%. And for a lot of us, it's where we actually live most of the time. Now, what your conscious mind also does is it presents the situation to your subconscious. So if you can picture yourself when you woke up this morning, on a Thursday morning, your alarm went off. It's kind of drizzling outside, it's overcast, it's winter, we know it's going to be cold. And your conscious mind relayed all of this information to your subconscious mind and says, no, it's 5:30 in the morning, I'm cold, I feel a bit tired, it's Thursday, I'm going to work, and it's drizzling outside. And your conscious mind says to your subconscious mind, how do we feel about this? Now, your subconscious mind, in that area that you can see in the grey circle, is where your emotions, your beliefs, your values, your long-term memories, and your habits live. Now, those beliefs and those values will look and they'll go, what do I think about this situation? And it will make a decision on how you feel. And that decision might be, I really don't like winter. I don't like being cold. I don't want to go to work. I'm tired. It's early. This is not a good situation. So how am I going to feel about this today? Not great. And then your subconscious is actually giving your conscious mind this information, and then it sets up your posture, the way that you approach the day, your mindset of the day. And the mind is an amazing thing, because once you've made that decision in your mind, it becomes a little bit of a proving game. So your mind wants to prove that it's right. So it starts looking for justification and examples. So for instance, if I decided that I didn't like this, then today's not going to be a good day. Then I might find on the way to work, of course, I got every red light. Of course, my umbrella turned inside out when it was going to do that. Of course, that person in front of me pushed in when it was my turn next. So you can see that your mind is actually powerful enough to start looking for these examples. And a lot of the time it becomes that of course answer where you're showing that your mind is right. And here is the justification that's telling me that I was right. Of course, this has happened. Yes, this has happened. Your subconscious mind, so our specialists have looked into it and they believe that it is 30,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind, which is huge, right? 30,000 times more powerful. So this always makes me think, for those people out there that live majority of their life in their conscious mind rather than their subconscious mind, if you know somebody who doesn't like to get in touch with their emotions or likes to, keep their values and beliefs shut down, my husband's a perfect example of it, then when you're looking at your mind, there is a huge chunk that they're really not using and a huge amount of power that can actually change the path of their day and the success of their day in and out of work that they're actually missing out on that opportunity for. Your subconscious mind is obviously it's the opposite to the front line, it's the back office. So you're looking at a computer, it's actually all of the data, it's the hard wiring that's sitting inside the laptop or inside the computer that you can't actually see. So they are the three different areas. Now, when you're working in emotional intelligence, it is your subconscious mind that you need to be working in. So it is all around those emotions, those beliefs, those values, those habits, those long-term memories. That's what we're tapping into. So anytime you're doing training on emotional intelligence, you need to get into that subconscious mind as fast as you can and be as open as you possibly can into really exposing yourself in that place. Now, with all of my clients and when we go through workshops, we do quite a few activities to be able to take you into that subconscious mind. And once you know how to do it, it also is a great tool to be able to do in the workplace as well. If you're trying to influence or you're trying to understand a situation, unless you get into that subconscious mind of the people that you're communicating or dealing with, you're only going to get that quick response, automatic conscious reaction. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So we're going to go into the 5 areas now. I'm going to start with self-awareness, and each one of these 5 areas, what I'm going to touch on is some of the key things in these actual factors, but also some of the ways that we can approach each one to know, okay, Amy, how do I work on it? How do I improve it? What are my options there for actually increasing my emotional intelligence in these areas? So let's look at self-awareness first. Self-awareness, probably the key areas of self-awareness is all about your beliefs and your values. It's really about understanding who you are. Now, these beliefs and values, majority of them are actually created before you turn 7. So that's pretty big, right? Before you turn 7, you have created the beliefs and values, those core beliefs and values that are going to guide you through your life. Now, does that mean that once you're over 7, you're pretty much done? That, there's nothing you can do? Absolutely not. So we continue to create those beliefs and values, and we can continue to change those beliefs and values and really challenge them and rewire them. But it becomes a lot harder after you get after 7. So once you get over 7, it is all about being able to recognize and open yourself up and really admit to yourself and become self-aware of what those values and those beliefs are and what's driving them, what's created them, in order to actually reframe them and change them. Best example I can do in this area is always on fight or flight. Let me give you a quick example of this. I want you to picture a Chihuahua dog for me. I'm hoping you all know what a Chihuahua looks like. If you don't know what a Chihuahua looks like, they're a very small dog. They probably stand about less than a ruler off the ground, I'd say, wouldn't you, Peter? Yeah,
very small.
Very small. They've got a bit of a reputation for being a small dog syndrome or a bit feisty.
Yappy dog.
A yappy dog. They tend to yap and bark a lot. But also they're not afraid to go for your ankles either. So they're a bit of an ankle biter as well at times. Now that's a very generalized approach to Chihuahua. So if you do have a Chihuahua out there that's gorgeous and timid and loves cuddles, and that's fantastic as well. But let's just go with that really generalized approach for a Chihuahua at the moment. So picture that Chihuahua dog and picture a really big dog, maybe like a massive dog or a German Shepherd or a Rottweiler or something like that. I want you to picture these 2 dogs coming up against each other in the street. And they've decided these two dogs have come face to face and they don't really like each other. Actually, they really don't like each other, and you can hear the growling is starting to happen. Now, in that situation, if you're picturing it, what do you think that Chihuahua will do? I'll ask you, Peter, what do you think that Chihuahua would do?
It would attack our Ridgeback.
Yes, it would, right? This Chihuahua physically has nothing on this big dog. So it is maybe a tenth of the height. It has no physical attributes. It's telling this Chihuahua dog that it's going to beat this big, whatever type of dog it is, but a much larger dog in this confrontation. The only thing that's going on is in that mind of that Chihuahua, it's looking at this situation saying, I've got this. Like, I have well and truly got this. And what it is, it's that belief inside that Chihuahua's mind that tells the Chihuahua that they've got it. Now, the reason why I use this example is that this happens in the workplace so often. We walk into a room, we walk into a meeting, we walk into an office, a sales opportunity, anything like that, and we make a few really quick decisions. We have a look at the people that are around us and we think, what are their qualifications? How long have they been doing the job for? Are they better than I am at it? What's their technique? How long have they been here? How old are they? What's their gender? What's their background? And we make this assumption based on our beliefs. And our beliefs will either tell us whether, yes, we belong in this room. Yes, I belong in this conversation. Yes, I've got the confidence and the knowledge to be able to feel like this and really hold my ground. Or am I an imposter? And this is where self-awareness really comes in, is that understanding your beliefs and your values and what's driving those decisions in your mind will determine whether you fight or flight. It will determine whether you speak up in that meeting, whether you speak up in the workforce, whether you put that great idea forward. It will determine how far you go and the actual outcome and whether it's successful or not. So this impacts not only you, but all of the staff around you, is their self-awareness and their beliefs and values of how good they are at their job and what they have to offer. Let's move on to self-regulation. As I said, this is probably the biggest one that people come to me for, and they say, Amy, I just can't control. I just can't control how I react in the situation. I know it's not right. I look at it afterwards and think, wow, what have I done? I want to learn how to do it so I don't react like that. So self-regulation, touching on this area, we've got 8 core emotions. And, if you go through the studies, some people will say 6, some people will say 10. But in general, when I look at it, I think 8's pretty much a good average for our core emotions. And those core emotions are anger, fear, guilt, passion, shame, love, pain, and joy. And you can see them there in the little diagram. Each one of those emotions has things that we talk about how it makes us feel. We talk about their gifts. And the reason why we talk about those gifts is it's extremely important to understand that there is no such thing as a bad emotion. I'm just going to say that again. There is no such thing as a bad emotion. Anger is not bad. Fear is not bad. There are an appropriate situation for every single emotion, and there is also an appropriate severity of showing that emotion. So if we look at this as an example, and I say to you, if fear didn't exist, if you never ever had fear in any situation, what would happen? And the answer to that is we would die. And the reason why we would die is that we would lose all of our risk assessment. We wouldn't have any fear to jump out of a window, to jump off a bridge, to set ourselves on fire. There is no logical part in our mind that says if we do that, we will injure ourselves, or we need to stop doing that. Fear actually gives us boundaries, and those boundaries are good. Sometimes our fear makes our boundaries very restricted. And that is where self-doubt and fear comes in, and it actually limits what we're capable of. Same as anger. Anger has its appropriate situations. Anger actually gives you assertiveness. It gives you strength. It gives you energy. So there are situations when you really want to draw on that actual emotion to be strong, to be energetic. People that walk into a gym and want to do a fantastic workout usually channel anger in a way of assertiveness or strength or energy. And if we look at the reverse in that whole joy area, if you're attending a funeral, or if you're attending a situation that is extremely sad, or somebody is sitting down to you and telling you exactly how you feel, and your emotional response is joy or happiness or abundance or gratitude, or you're elated, you can imagine how that emotion is not appropriate in that situation as well. So every emotion has its place. It all comes down to how appropriate it is in that situation, and also the severity of it as well. 3 key areas in self-regulation that we touch on. That's all about recognizing the emotion first, reframing it to actually go, okay, if I don't want to feel this emotion, what do I want to feel? Because you always have to feel an emotion, and then reviewing it as well. Motivation, nice and easy. This is all about your why, your purpose. What are you actually doing, and why are you doing it? So you will know, working with teams and anyone around you, even your family, your partners, your kids, there is nothing that we do in this world without an emotional attachment. There is an emotional driver that comes in underneath it, and people need to know the purpose and the why before they'll actually do something. Now, I've just got a few things up there. If you're familiar with SMART goals, then you can see up there, there's actually a SMARTer goal. And that is a whole nother session that I do, which is actually brilliant. I was a massive fan of SMART goals until I found SMARTer. And the reason being is that a SMART goal is very black and white. You'll either achieve it or you won't. The downside to a SMART goal is that you actually don't have anything to gain or lose. You need that emotional attachment. How will I feel if I achieve it? How will I feel if I don't achieve it? What will I do to reward myself at the end? So SMARTer goals are fantastic. And the difference between a SMART goal and a SMARTer goal is the actual chunking down process. So I'm sure you've worked for a company before that has come up with fantastic ideas and great project plans. And, they've got all the stuff there ready to go, and somehow those projects never quite deliver. And that right there is the difference between a SMART and a SMARTer goal. People skills, leadership is my specialty. I absolutely love it. People skills on this slide, you can see on the right-hand side, that's a bit of an idea of my thoughts on what you need in a team. You certainly don't want a cookie cutter team. And there is a lot of information around cookie cutter teams that you don't want to go along. And I know that usually when you welcome someone into a business, you say, okay, here's a position description. Here are your key objectives. Here's what you need to achieve. Here's your accounts or your budget, and go for it. Now, every person in your team and every person in your business brings a totally different skill set into your team. And when we use a cookie cutter approach, what we do is we actually void that difference and that reason why you brought them into the team. So the great thing about people skills and the great thing about emotional intelligence is actually doing emotional profiles on each and every person in your team, each person that you work with, so that you know their emotional intelligence, but you also know their emotional profile. Very similar to what you would do a technical profile. So if somebody came into your team or somebody that you work for, they would have a skills matrix or a technical profile that tells you where they're at from a technical point of view, what are the next steps, how do I train them, where are they going in their path. This is very similar. It's an emotional assessment. It's an emotional profile that builds to tell you how do they deal with change? What is their default emotion that's going to come out in situations? How do they like feedback and things like that? Are they a numbers person? Are they a words person? Do they love working on projects? Do they not? Are they a great brainstormer, or are they a great implementer? All of these things are so important. It's what makes each and every person so different. And when we tap into those emotional intelligence skills, that is the difference between a high-performing team and a team. Empathy, empowerment, and emotional hijacking, the 3 E's in people skills that I like to call them. Emotional hijacking, I'm going to touch on another slide, so I'm going to skip that one. Empathy, I'm going to mention this really quickly because empathy is something we can talk about for hours. Empathy is something that is thrown around, yet it is so misunderstood. There is a massive difference between empathy and sympathy. Now, the thing with sympathy is that you're hearing the situation and you're feeling for them. You feel sad for them, or you look in the situation thinking, this is not great. Empathy, you don't need to agree with the emotion that they're showing at all. So in an empathy situation, you can be looking at them and saying, wow, they are totally overreacting in this situation, or this is blown absolutely out of proportion. But empathy is not about you agreeing with their emotional reaction. Empathy is about you recognizing the emotional reaction. And when I say that, what I mean is that if you've got somebody, say for instance, a customer who was really angry in a situation, really angry, and you're looking at it and you're listening to him and you're thinking, you are really overreacting. Like, this is not that bad. You're clearly having a bad day and it's being taken out on me. When we empathize, all we do is we look and we say, okay, what is the emotion they are feeling at the moment? And we would say they're extremely angry. And then we go, okay, when was the last time I felt this angry? Now, it doesn't need to be a similar situation. You never even have to have been in this situation. All you need to recognize is how you feel when you feel really angry. And then once you work that out, you think, what is the worst thing that somebody can say to me when I'm really angry? And the worst thing that people can generally say is, calm down, or it's not that big a deal, or they won't listen to you and they don't let you vent. They just try to solve it for you straight away or come up with a solution. Now, as humans, we naturally don't love conflict. So in a situation where somebody is very angry, we do straight away go into defensive mode, or we try and quickly solve it and say, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Like, I can do this for you. It'll all be taken care of. But a really angry person doesn't want that. And a lot of the time we wonder why when an angry person comes in, the first person they speak to absolutely cops it. They cop a spray and they hear it and it gets escalated to the leader, and then the leader gets on the phone call and the person's calmed down and it's really easily resolved. And the leader comes up to the person and says, actually, they weren't too bad. I solved it quite easily. And the leader looks fantastic. And the frontline person sat there thinking, but they were so rude to me. Why were they nice to you? And that's where empathy comes in, is that people that are really angry need to be heard. So empathy is all about recognizing those emotions and actually knowing how to react in that situation based on when you last felt that emotion. Empowerment is fantastic. Empowerment needs to be in every business. It's all about not giving an answer. It's about trusting and supporting them to find an answer. There is actually a detailed process that I take teams through when it comes to empowerment to actually teach someone truly how to empower the people around them. Is it a walk in the park? No, it's not. It comes with a lot of trust. It comes with a lot of upskilling. It comes with a lot of delegation and true power delegation or decision-making delegation. But empowerment is a great process to go through, especially for those in leadership positions. Communication is nice and simple. Communication is probably the one that I do the most work in, simply because it can be taught at any level and it doesn't matter where your EI is at, you will always benefit from communication. It's also the easiest to teach because it's really quick examples and quick skills that you take on board that you can implement instantly. So some of those skills and some of those tools in that area are very much around pausing. The power of the pause, if you've ever heard of it, is probably one of the most powerful tools that you can learn, the easiest you can learn, and it also is reflective in day-to-day, not just in the workplace, in your family, when you're at the shops and you're in a buying process. I teach it to a lot of sales environments as well, so it's a great sales skill to have. And it's actually just pausing, knowing that if you pause and you step back from that microphone, it is 100% human nature that we like to fill silence with talking. You will learn so much about somebody if you can actually master the power of the pause. We talk also about the impact, the emotional undertone of words. So I've thrown some of the words up there. The emotional undertone of using the word busy, which drives me crazy. It's like an epidemic at the moment. Everybody's busy and it's turned into a competition. And if I'm not busy, I surely am not successful. But a massive undertone there of the impact that you're having on others by actually saying that you're busy. Same with the words that I can't, I have to. I can and I have to are lacking ownership. If you're saying I can and I have to, then you're telling your mind that I don't want to. So you're straight away going in with the negative mindset saying, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm being forced to do it, or it's impossible. So it's working around those actual words and the impact that it's having on your mind to achieve the outcome. I need you to is very forceful It's pretty much common that nobody likes to be told what to do. Unless you're in an emergency situation, then please tell me what to do. But other than that, nobody likes being told what to do. So it's being able to change and influence your language around that area. Last part of communication, and we do a lot of work around meetings and emails, which is, let's be honest, it's where we spend majority of our work days at the moment, is taken up with meetings and emails. Emotional intelligence can have a huge impact on those areas to actually reduce the number of meetings and emails that you're dealing with and be able to buy some time back in your day. And that is all done around the communication about it. It's done about the purpose and the outcome. It's done with making sure that the emotional need is actually met for everyone. The difference between sending a really well-written email first, as opposed to going back and forth in an email war or an email trail that goes over 3 days and all of a sudden you've spent 6 hours on this email trail back and forth, you can imagine how much time in your day you're going to gain back. We touch on agenda, layouts, having the right people in the room, and also the form of communication. So they're your 5 high-level areas. The last area I want to talk about today is the emotional brain. It is probably my favorite. There is that scientific part of me that I like to know, okay, Amy, that's great. It's all really high levels, some great buzzwords in there, but tell me what is happening in my mind. This is a great thing for emotional intelligence, because what you'll learn from this process is it's not actually a choice a lot of the time. So when we go through things like emotional hijacking, it's a real thing. It's a scientifically proven thing. So let me show you how it works. When we take information in through all of our 5 senses, it goes into our mind and straight to our thalamus. Now, our thalamus converts it into brain language, which means that it takes that information, whether it's coming through auditory or visual or however it's coming, and actually takes it, converts it into brain language so we can understand it, and then pushes it through to your neocortex. Now, your neocortex then processes the information and assesses what type it is. So it actually works out, okay, what is this information and what does it mean? It sends a signal to your amygdala, and your amygdala actually manages your emotional response. So your amygdala is a very important part of your mind when it comes to emotional intelligence. It's where it all kind of happens. Then it pushes it down to your body for an emotional response. So Sophie, I can see your question there. I'm about to tell you what emotional hijacking is, so hang in there with me. So the emotional response then goes down to your body, and your body actually reacts as well. So if we go back to that dog situation where the Chihuahua has decided that it's going to fight, what happens is there's actually a number of chemical reactions that happen in our body. For instance, if you've decided to fight, if you're sitting there at the moment, have a look at your hands. When we are angry and when we decide to fight, what tends to happen is we clench our fists. And why this happens is that we actually push our blood pressure and so much of our blood straight down into our arms and our hands, ready to actually fight, because we want the most strength that we have in our fists ready to go. If we're going to flight, we're going to run, then what happens is the blood actually pushes the majority of our blood into our major limbs, being our legs most of the time, and into our arms as well, so we can run faster. Sometimes that's why when we say fear or shock, we say they are deathly white, and that's because the blood has ran out of your head and straight down to your legs, ready to run as fast as you can. Lots of different things in that areas as well. Simple things like if you're in shock, your eyes tend to open right up, and what that's doing is actually opening up your peripheral vision so you can capture as much as you possibly can in that situation to assess what is going on and what do I need to do. So I'll stop on those emotional responses and let me tell you about emotional hijacking. Now you can see that little dotted line from the thalamus to the amygdala on that picture. Now this is what we call an emotional hijacking. So what happens is that information comes into your thalamus and majority of it goes through to your neocortex. But this little dotted line runs straight to your amygdala. And what happens is we actually have an emotional reaction before we even process the information. Now, I don't know if I've got time for a story. I know we're really running out.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Have we got time for a story?
Absolutely.
All right,
Stories
I'll throw it in
great.
there because I love this story. It does paint me as a little bit of a bad mother, but that's okay. It's a great example, which is why I use it. great example of an emotional hijack for you. We love to camp. We love to go away in the caravan. We were down south in the caravan earlier on this year. It was actually in January this year. And my daughter, I have 2 kids. I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. My daughter was in the pool. We've gone to the same caravan park for years and years. She was in the pool and playing with her friends. We were sitting around the camp with our friends, having a few drinks, relaxing, having some nibbles like you do when you're camping. Now, my daughter has the most distinctive scream you've ever heard, and I'm sure for all the parents out there, we all know what our child's cry or scream sounds like. Even if it's in the middle of a whole bunch of kids, we know which one is our child. Our daughter let out a huge scream, and my husband and I knew it was her straight away, and up we jumped and we ran over. Now, at that point in time, I had an emotional hijacking. And the reason I had that emotional hijacking is because all I knew at that point in time was that my daughter was screaming and crying. So my mind straight away went to worst case scenario, and I had that emotional hijacking. Now, what happened is my amygdala kicked in and it went, oh my God, what's happening? Is she dying? What state is she in? What is actually happening to her? If I need to take her to the hospital, I've been drinking. I can't drive a car. I'm the worst mother in the world. Why was I even letting her there? So all of these things, all of these emotions, I'm starting to feel guilt and shame and anger at myself for getting into this situation. And I'm actually running to the pool area. And I turn that corner and my husband, totally different reaction. He's running around calling, Amelia, stop screaming. Be quiet. I'm running around. I get to the pool area and I see my daughter. Now, my daughter has blood pouring out of her nose. But at that point, and I will let you know, she broke her nose. So it wasn't a great situation. But the minute I saw her, I could see she was walking. I could see she was breathing. I could see that she was physically okay. And another mother, a great mother, as opposed to me, was walking along helping her. Now, at that point in time, my neocortex kicked in. The information went into my neocortex and I could actually process and assess the information. She was okay. And now my emotions pushing through my neocortex now said to my amygdala, this is the emotional reaction you need in this situation. Totally different to the one that I had with the emotional hijacking. And that situation, that reaction that I needed was confidence, calm, and comfort. I needed to look instantly. I changed and I said, it's okay. It is okay, sweet, because she was in a state I needed to be calm. So I grabbed her, I hugged her. It's all okay. We'll get rid of this blood. We'll assess it and everything will be okay. Now, the reason why I tell this story, and I can see that Kylie's clicked into it and she's already one step ahead, is that this happens all the time. All the time, especially in the workplace. People have this emotional hijacking. They hear the slightest bit of information and without even knowing the full story, they go into an emotional hijack. If they hear the word restructure, or they hear the word gossip or bullying or anything like that, they jump the gun. If they hear someone disagree with them, if they put something forward and someone says, oh, I disagree, instantly, emotional hijacking happens. Now, this is a scientific process. So this isn't just them and their personality and their lack of. This is actually happening to them. So very important to understand that this is an emotional hijacking and it scientifically is something that's happening.
So just on that one, Amy, with that question that we've got come in, and we'll have more questions at the end for everyone. So keep the questions coming in.
What is the best way to deal with that?
How do you handle it at work?
Yeah.
Or is that an entire different seminar?
That is a whole different seminar. So there's 2 things here. There is an emotional hijacking, which there is a step-by-step process that we go through to actually hone in on an emotional hijacking situation. It takes self-regulation in there as well. It takes a lot of power of the pause as well. There's a lot of different factors that come into it to be able to take someone out of that emotional hijack and be able to control the situation. In order to interrupt, or I call it a disrupt, an emotional hijacking, you also need to know that person's emotional profile. If you don't know it, then you need to sit down and be very observant and watch the situation and pick up on those key EI signs right then and there to know how to bring them out of that situation. But there is very much a 5-step process to stop that. There's also something called emotional flooding, which is a totally different situation. And if I give you an example and say, tonight when I go home, my husband is due to cook dinner. If I walk into the house this afternoon and dinner is not cooked and my husband's forgotten about it and he's sitting on the lounge watching TV, and I walk in and say, "Where's dinner?" And he says, "Oh, I forgot." And I say, "You always forget. You never follow through with what you're supposed to do. Remember 3 years ago when this happened?" Now, this is an emotional flooding situation. This is when somebody is actually, it's not all about this situation. They're pulling things in from all of these different occurrences. That's when emotional flooding happens. Totally different situation, totally different approach. And that takes a lot more detail in some great coaching and some really in-depth EI to pull them out of that one.
Cool.
So last thing I just want to say to you there is this slide's up here. What I want you to do it there, we've come to the end of this seminar, and I'm going to throw it over to Peter for some questions and leave you with a last quote. But I want you to sit down and think about yourself first. I want you to think about, how does your EI rate? If you were to give yourself a score out of 10 in all 5 areas that we've touched on today, where would you rate yourself? Are you a 6? Are you a 10? Or are you a 2? Out of all of those 5 segments, what could you work on to improve your emotional intelligence, and how would you go about it? It's always great then to have a look at the people around you, to have a look at your teams, have a look at your leaders, and understand, how does their EI rate and where could they benefit from improving their EI? So webinar objectives, if I just summarize and look and say we covered off the 5 key factors of EI and what they mean, which was just on that previous slide. We understand how to leverage the subconscious mind to resolve the underlying problem. So it's getting past that conscious mind and into the subconscious to actually tap in, and the qualities that actually come out of those 5 key factors of EI. And lastly, we touch on an emotional brain and how it drives our reactions through those emotional hijacking, but also through the actual emotional response that we push down to our body. EI for me, this is something that I say quite often when people say to me, what is emotional intelligence and why would it make a difference in my business or in my life? Emotional intelligence for me is all about, it's not what you know or what you can do. So your technical skills really don't come into play when we're talking about this. It's all about how and why you do it. It's the purpose, it's the impact you have on those around you. And it's the how and why that really makes the difference between how far your career will go and how successful the outcome of every situation is. So thank you so much, Peter. I'll throw it over to you now for questions, and please send through any more questions that you have online as well.
Brilliant, Amy. That was just awesome. I've been quietly writing my notes, and I've been excited. I mean, I saw the presentation, the content before, but having you deliver it, it's quite amazing. And some of my key takeaways from that, I mean, the power of the pause. Our last webinar was when we had Keith Ayres and talking about productive conflict, and he talked about the reframing, and you get into that as well. And I certainly know with my personality is that, and with all of us, that the power of the pause is a really powerful thing, not just in face-to-face communication, but as you rightly said, it's a lot of our communications in written and typing.
Yes, absolutely.
Pause before you hit send on that email.
Oh, I always say sleep on it overnight.
Absolutely.
If you need to write it out in an emotional state, just keep it in your draft, sleep on it overnight, and then see if it's that important the next day.
Yeah, totally. So just we've got a few questions coming in, so that's fantastic. To confirm, we will be posting this on our website, on the Populous website. I should apologise at the beginning. I mean, whilst I introduce you, I mean, we work with our webinar series. We want to have people that are aligned to what we do at Populous, but also people that we work with and as our partners and that we know and trust. And with Amy, with what you do, it's fantastic that the work that you do, and we're organising Amy to do work with our team, and then also for our clients and all that sort of stuff. So if you would like to have Amy come and work and do some work in your team, please get in touch with us. We do have we'll have our contact details at the end here. But if you've got any of those questions, there are a couple of questions, and we'll cover off on those. But certainly what we do at Populous, I mean, these are the things that we do, and I'll unashamedly say that we like to help with the entire life cycle, whether it's the recruitment. There's some of the things that we do, and it's really that training and development that we want to be helping teams. The other side of HR is the compliance and minimising the risk, but this is where where the rubber meets the road with developing the team and getting a high performing team, isn't it?
That's right. To me, it's the difference between a team and a high performing team is that emotional intelligence.
Yes.
It's a different differentiator.
Yeah. So we do a lot of work with communication and empathy, but a couple of questions, if I may. What's the hardest part of emotional intelligence?
Self-regulation, hands down. Yeah, it is. And look, it is probably the most popular one that I have people come to me. It is the hardest because I wish I had a magic switch that I could give you that would help you to control that. But it is very much a practice. So you find that with self-reg, the first couple of times you try to put it into place and do your reframing, do you recognize, reframe, review, we usually don't realize we've done it until after the situation. And we look and we think, wow, I've just done that again. I've just reacted like that. But each time we put it into play, we realize earlier and earlier in the situation, we'll start realizing while we're in that situation. And then we get to the point where we actually recognize our triggers. And it's all about recognizing those triggers before they happen and getting ready to reframe so it actually stops it from happening.
So it doesn't sound like this is a one-day workshop, silver bullet type scenario.
No, so I say to a lot of people actually when they come to my workshop, at the end we say, great, you've been on an emotional intelligence course, that means you're emotionally intelligent. Unfortunately, no. So emotional intelligence is something that we really need to embed into what we do. All I can do is give you the tools, give you ideas, and really open yourself up to those skill sets. But it is 100% self-commitment of wanting to change those values, those beliefs, and really work in that subconscious mind to be able to become emotionally intelligent.
So with those values and beliefs is, like you said, by the age of 7, but is that something, is it affirmations as well that's required as well as this self-awareness?
Yeah, very much also defining moments. So we all have defining moments throughout our lives, and those defining moments tend to create our values and our beliefs. And recognizing those defining moments, and the biggest defining moment I had in my life is one of them is when I was 17, and that guided my whole career up until a couple of years ago. And it took me a long time to work out that defining moment actually sent me on that path. But once you recognize it, then you can go back and you can actually understand it, and you can reframe that belief and say, okay, that is not the belief that I want to attach to success. So what do I really think success is about? So yes, while it happens up to the age of 7, those defining moments continue to happen. Those limiting beliefs continue to happen. Anytime you smash your self-doubt or your fears, you redefine a belief. So, and if you had say, for instance, you had a fear of public speaking and you managed to smash that and overcome it, then your belief of I can't do public speaking becomes I can do public speaking. So those values and beliefs continue to change your whole life.
Fantastic. There is just so much that I'd like to ask.
I could talk about it for days.
I mean, we're standing here and there's so much energy. It's been a lot of fun. Another question we've got is, what's the low-hanging fruit? You know, where can we get some wins with this? I mean, if self-regulation is the hardest, what's the easy parts? Give me the easy bits, Amy.
The easy bits are absolutely around communication. So communication is there's small skills that you can learn and you can put into place straight away. So certainly the power of the pause. It takes you a while to master it, but it's something once you learn how to do it, you can start doing it straight away. The communications program that I do, we actually learn the skills in there. We test them out, ready to go out. So the work on emails, meetings, power of the pauses, filler words, and the actual emotional undertone of words such as busy and sorry or just sending you this email. They are instantaneous. So you get reward from that straight away. So communication is by far the easiest place to start.
I'm just an administrator. I'm just
sending you this email. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I just want to ask you a question. I know you're busy.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely. And we all do it.
We do, absolutely. So that's probably when I go back to review my clients and people that have been in my workshop, the quickest things I hear from them, I say, what did you implement in the last week? And they said, I cannot believe how many times I say sorry. I've stopped doing that.
Yes.
And let me just throw in there, sorry is not a bad word, same as there's no emotion that's bad. Sorry is absolutely a right word and it's got a place. And if you've made an error, then say sorry. Don't ever stop yourself from apologizing. But if you're saying the word sorry, make sure you're apologizing for something.
Yes. The last question we have here is EI just for senior people, for managers, or is it for my whole team?
It is for your whole team. So I'd say if you're working on emotional intelligence, if you are targeting just one part of your business, then it's not going to work out. You need everyone on board.
Yeah.
And it always needs to come as a very much a circular approach. So when I work on emotional intelligence with leaders and with their teams, I'll always ask the leaders when they're in their room to not be leaders. Okay, so when people are in a room, and I've ran EI workshops from everything from frontline all the way up to CEOs in the room, and the stature in your job title is totally irrelevant when you're learning emotional intelligence, because we all have the same 5 key factors, and we all have the same emotions and the same brains that are working off those same scientific bases. So it is for everyone, and it needs to be very much a holistic approach.
Fantastic. So if, it's not just for the sales team. It's not just for the operational team. It's and the admin team that gets left out. It's for everyone.
It's for everyone, everyone. And even, you know, I love seeing companies that will even bring in a temp to cover the phones and receptions. So
Absolutely.
The receptionist can also come into it. There is the sales part of EI. There is a totally different around your modalities and your influencing power to put emotional intelligence and NLP techniques into sales, which is quite interesting. But that's kind of a tangent of EI.
Amy, there's so much. I've got so many more notes. I mean, what you said about the smarter, I mean, that's
it's a game changer, right?
That's a game changer.
It's a game changer.
Get it emotionally connected and have it rewarding.
Yeah.
So folks, we've still got quite a few of you online there, and wow, there's just so much. If you'd like to have Amy come and help you, get in touch with us. We do have here we go. Let's work with some of these slides with what we've got. We do have a couple other exciting things coming up with the next webinar in this series, and this whole series is about building the team, building your employee as an individual, but as a collective, get the team to be a higher performing team. So the stuff that Amy's presented today is there's just so much. There's just so much. So thank you so much for coming along today. We've had fun in here. It's now time for our muffins.
I know, I want one of those with the caramel inside.
Oh, it looks so good. If you do want to get in touch with Amy and have her help your team, I'll just bring up the last slide to get in touch with us. But we are really excited also for the next one to have Dr. Jenny Brockers, who's a local GP, come best-selling author and presenter. And Amy, you've come across Jenny and bumped into her as well. Yeah,
so Jenny and I are both in the part of the Professional Speakers Association for Australia. So yes, I've come across Jenny there.
I know she's going to New Zealand and Sydney and Melbourne and talking over there. So we're really excited to have her
fantastic session
as well. Yeah, so it's really exciting. So we're wanting to help you out there and building better teams. So thriving by design, being a better human, it continues in this theme of the series. And if you'd like to get in touch, there's our details up on screen. We are challenging ourselves, so the next time we're actually going to have a bit of a live feed. So that's going to be even interesting. You'll see our Populous office in here when Dr. Jenny Brockers is in. And if you would like to have Amy come and help you, do that. But what we do at Populous, we want to be able to help you and your team grow. So thanks for having us on board today. Hope you were able to pick up something from the emotional intelligence. I've got a whole heap of notes. I'm sure you have. Just a reminder, this video will be going live on the Populous website. And once our tech guys and girls can get that happening. So thanks for having us and have a fabulous day.
Thank you. See you later.